Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and today we are studying a little bit more on contrast paints. A few weeks ago, I got an interesting comment on this video here, where I was asked if it was possible to make your own contrast paint just using the contrast medium and regular paints. That got me thinking about trying to mix different stuff into different mediums and see what comes out of that. So that's what we're gonna do here today. We're gonna mix stuff and see what the paint will look like afterwards. Now we're continuing with our study on contrast paints, and this time around we're gonna try to see what we can do with the contrast medium and in comparison lamian medium. We're starting out with the yellow contrast paint. We're just putting that on the side of this little texture plate that I made with some textured paint. I'm just putting that down to see what the contrast paint looks. We'll be using this orange-yellow contrast paint and then working with different types of orange paints mixed with contrast medium and lamian medium. Starting out with putting a little bit of dollop of contrast medium down, and then we're putting Citadel orange paint into one of them and painting a small blob of that on the texture palette. Mixing that well and then putting just a simple square on there, seeing what it looks like. Immediately you can see it's quite a lot shinier than the contrast paint. It seems to be more singular color. Also Vallejo orange color, it's quite similar in tone to the Citadel color, but I like this color a little bit more though. But it's gonna be quite similar on the palette. A little bit thinner paint to begin with, so it's going to be a little bit clearer on the palette. It gives more of a contrast feel than the Citadel paint, and then a little bit of orange ink. Now I was most interested to see what the ink would do inside this medium, and what it did made quite a nice glaze. That's the main thing what it did. It didn't have much contrast to it, but it was a really smooth and fun glaze to work with. So I actually highly recommend putting inks in contrast medium. It's fun. Now we're gonna do the same thing with lamian medium and the same colors. We're starting out with mixing a little bit of the Citadel orange into lamian medium. And of course, no surprise here, we just made an orange glaze. And of course, that is what we were expecting when we're adding lamian medium, which is a glazed medium, and acrylic paints. Again, we did the same thing with the Vallejo color, but it was a little bit closer to the contrast glaze that we made with the Vallejo color than the Citadel glaze. It seems to hold the darker color a little bit better, and I'm still just using rough amounts. It's a drop-ish. Ink in lamian medium, also wonderful glaze. So nothing really bad going on there. We're still not hitting that contrast feel because we're not getting that interesting shade that contrast paint is giving us. Of course, there are many different variants to do this. Now we're just gonna add a little bit of shade and a little bit of glaze, both to the contrast medium and the lamian medium, and just see how that looks, both opposed to each other and to the different glazes. We're starting out with the lamian medium, and we're of course just getting a thinner glaze because that was what we were expecting. Contrast medium, it's thicker to paint, but still getting quite similar result. And then of course we're just adding the base glaze to see what that looks like, and it's just a little bit more color, but the same texture. And again, we're using the same setup. It's just a shade, orange shade now into a glaze, and orange shade into the contrast medium, and we're just getting a little bit of a darker glaze. It's nothing too fancy going on. And then, of course, just a regular orange shade there. And of course, it's a little bit darker than the other bits. Now we're just letting it dry a little bit so we can see what it looks like when it's ready. Now that it's ready, I must say that the contrast paint, of course, has this tonal variant to it that the others don't have. But however, I must say that adding inks to both the contrast medium and the lamian medium is quite fun. Adding the Vallejo colors to the contrast medium and the lamian medium also makes quite striking colors. However, I find that the regular Citadel paint to the contrast medium and the lamian medium isn't as fun as the ink and the Vallejo. However, all of them are making fine glazes and fun to work with, but not really contrasty paints. They are probably different if you use dry pigments or something like that. Something to try out in the future. Thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe and shout, let it all out. But until next time, farewell.